All right, everyone. Thank you for coming this afternoon. Our next speaker is Mark Jacobson, and I'm going to read his bio so I get it right and not try to do it from memory. Mark is a geologist, mineralogist specializing in pegmatites. He obtained a BS in mineralogy and geochemistry from Pennsylvania State University in 1973 and an MS in sedimentary geology from the University of California at Berkeley in 1976. After graduate school, he worked for Amoco and Chevron in the oil and gas development as an earth scientist, completing 35 years with Chevron before retiring in 2013. He's published numerous articles on the geology, mineralogy, and mining collecting histories of pegmatites since 1978, as well as 3 major books: The Gems of Hedonite, North Carolina, Mining History, Geology, and Mineralogy, Guidebook to the Pegmatites of Western Australia, and Antero Aquamarines, Minerals from the Mount Antero, White Mountain region, Chaffee County, Colorado. He has been a consulting editor for Rocks and Minerals since 1984 and is the current president of National Friends of Mineralogy and past president of FM Colorado chapter. His current project is on Amazonite and Smoky Quartz locality at Crystal Peak, Taylor County, Colorado, and he will cover the mining history, or that book will cover the mining history, geology, and mineralogy of the locality, which is located north of Florissant and Lake George in Park and Taylor counties. One thing that he is currently working on is the symposium during the Tucson show on silicate minerals. So if you're down there, there will be a day-long seminar on silicates, and I will be speaking on Thunder Egg, so don't put that against the seminar just because I'm going to be there talking. It covers a wide range of silicates, including agate and opal and the other silicates. So if you would, today Mark is going to be talking about some of the excellent finds from here in Colorado. So if you would, give Mark a warm welcome.
What I wanted to do with this talk, which is a little bit different, it's not a unified talk in that there's no real central theme, except that I'm going to be talking about things that you probably have not seen displayed and stories you have not heard being told. So my goal here was to tell you things that you may never have been heard or exposed about. And I was asked to put in some pretty things so that it would not be all, boring metallics or meaning non-crystal type things. Now, for me, this information I'm showing you has been collected over a span of more than 30 years. So that's most of the people who've been major contributors to my knowledge for what I'm going to show you, both in terms of sharing pictures, telling me stories, because almost everything I talk about is things that people have told me or showed me, not things necessarily I have done. Now, again, they're all only Colorado localities. The specimens the specimens are significant. They're not necessarily beautiful, and they're sometimes quite rare. They are mostly from pegmatite localities. And again, as I mentioned, these are things you probably have not seen. Now, what is the coverage geographically? So there's the western half of the state. Mostly in other words, I've left out the flat plains. And you can see I'm doing mostly front range stuff, so I have not talked about the things that are, further in the western area of the state. One of the things I want to bring out is that almost never do you see a bismuthinite in the field, in a museum, in a display case. It's a very silvery mineral. It is commonly found in pegmatites as well as ore deposits, and this is from Larimer County, Larimer County has the Crystal Mountain District, which is a large pegmatite district that until the 80s was under-collected. Closer to home, just outside of Denver, is the bigger pegmatite. The bigger pegmatite is famous because It actually was mined originally from mica in the 1880s. It's on private property. It was mined in the 40s for some beryl, and it has produced a handful of rare minerals, of columbite, beryl, and bismuthinite. This one also is from the same locality, but it comes from a rare collection. Jesse Randall was one of the early pre-1900 collectors. He was a journalist, and there's only a handful of people who published Minerals of Colorado as little booklets, and he is the author of 3 pre-1900 booklets called Minerals of Colorado. And he actually did he's not the earliest booklet, but he's one of the earlier ones. And that is his style of label that he used when he displayed his minerals in Georgetown in his newspaper office. The Devil's Hole is known actually for other things, as you'll see. It was a major beryl producer during World War II. It's still a major aggregate and decorative rock quarry, as you'll see. And it has produced some very nice, as you can see, that's pretty big bismuthinite. Another mineral that you very rarely see is chrysoberyl. And Colorado actually has quite a handful of chrysoberyl localities. There's about 4 or 5 of them all near Golden. And this one, of course, Gaines went to graduate school of mines. They collected a whole bunch of these Drew Hill chrysoberyls. As you can see, that's a large one. And they published a paper on it, and they sold a whole bunch. So actually, this is a Gaines specimen sold to Ward's, which is Rochester, and then sold to Harvard. And this is actually on display in Boston. But there are some other ones. This is the only pegmatite locality in Colorado that actually, for a short period of time, was mined for chrysoberyl as an ore of beryllium. The mine was active during the war years, and then it was abandoned. It's on private property. It has not been operated since. It has actually not been collected much at all. And the dumps still produce nice crystals. Here's a small one. This is an untwinned single crystal, also from the Wisdom Ranch. Now, this is in Larimer County in the Crystal Mountain District. This locality, which was actually started being mined in the 50s by King Koenig, which people who know what went on in Larimer County, King Koenig was a local prospector up there and had hundreds of claims all through the county. And the chrysoberyl was discovered by myself and a friend in 1982. It's found in a clevelandite zone, and it produced bunches and bunches of crystals until people started descending on it after 1986. So you can still find stuff there, but you have to know where to look. There's another example of it, because it also forms crystals in mica books. And there are scattered other one-time only type localities around the state. Squaw Pass has produced, this is the Squaw Pass campground. South of Idaho Springs produced a beryl crystal. The Santa Fe Mountain beryllium prospect also produced at least one chrysoberyl crystal, even though no one's ever seen any. And this is from a small pegmatite along the road, only one crystal in it, of chrysoberyl, that is. Now, another thing that you probably have never seen, it's there, relatively uncollected, in the Larimer County District again, is Gummiite. And you think of Gummiite, which Gummiite is a field term for a mixture of primary uraninite and hydrated autunite and a whole bunch of other minerals that until you actually analyze them, you go give them names. So Gummiite is not a mineral, it's a field term for the mixture. And the best place in the US is the Ruggles mine in New Hampshire. Large masses, beautiful colors, fabulous. And there really aren't that many other good Gummiite localities in the US. This one though, this specimen, certainly ranks up with the best of the Ruggles. And that was only found a year ago. A little bit earlier, in another pegmatite nearby, another specimen from a different quarry, different pegmatite. Now, if you want to find these things, you have to do it this way. Basically, you need a gamma radiation detector. And that specimen that I just showed, I'll go back to it for a second again, which is really, really nice, was found by these two guys during a symposium field trip in 2016. So usually you go on these symposium trips and you don't really find much. And they went out there, probably the first collectors with a radiation detector, and found it within 30 minutes on the dump, not the outcrop. Now, Schorl is found all over the place, but Schorl only becomes a really good collectible when you have the termination. This one dates back to probably before 1900. It came out of Jesse Randall's son's collection, which was called, his nickname was Neil. He operated the Georgetown Courier until it folded in, I think, 1926. But other places, and Clear Creek Canyon has been known for good Schorls. There's one that's in the Mines Museum. And this one is actually on display in one of the large fishbowl cases. So it's another great Schorl that's in the Daybone collection. Now, the Devil's Hole also produces large Schorls in only certain places. Now, another locality that, at least I call collected out, some people can go there and prove me wrong, it's the Robert D. Roots prospect, Amethyst prospect. Now, the name comes from the mineral dealer who lived in Idaho Springs, Robert D. Roots. He knew about the locality. Must have told it to several people, but the knowledge of that location was passed to Howard Bachman, since deceased. And in the early 80s, he told a handful of people where it's located. So this is looking on the other side of the canyon up to it. There's no road, there's no trail. It's an itty-bitty area. And if you don't know where it is, you probably will never find it. And during the early 80s, it was a lot more prolific. So this was one day of digging, which, by the way, you screen. In other words, because the crystals are small. And the largest one you see there looks like that. And there are 4 other crystals, not these, but there are 4 other crystals from this locality that are on display in in one of the Denver showcases. Now, Pete Madreski yesterday gave you an example of Nick Fennell and Bohan digging a major monster pit at what was the original Red Feather Lakes Amethyst locality, which was actually a very small area originally, discovered in 1922 by Professor Roy Coffin, who actually did a master's thesis on mineral localities. It's a short thesis, mineral localities in Larimer County. And that thesis, you can still find it. If you search right for it, you can find it online and pull it down. And there are still localities in that thesis that have not, including garnets this big, that have not been relocated by modern day collectors. So if you want a tip off of how to find some rare localities that might have fabulous stuff that have not been collected since the 20s, it's in that thesis. Now, this is actually one of the early ones. As you can see, it's in the Mines collection, and it's got a little scratched in date there of 6/22. So that's what the original stuff looked like. Now, Penoimer, which is what it was really called after Coffin discovered it, was the first operator of the mine. He operated a small little pit by hand near a river, and he screened the material. And he wasn't that conscientious. So before the 87 digging, there was just little pits there, and you would find crystals in just digging down 6 or 7 inches in a very small dump. Now, King Koenig had claimed it, He leased it to the miners of '87. After he passed away, Bill Hayward reclaimed it. He had it until he passed away. The claim was sold by, the heirs sold the claim. The heirs sold the claim to a private party who then let it lapse. And then William and Andy Hutchison picked it up, and they still have it open. During Hayward's era, there were a lot of club field trips that were allowed to go there, and I believe even Hutchinson, Will still allows field trips. But now you've got this gigantic area with stuff that has been hydraulically scattered everywhere. So it's tougher now. Now, these are the ones, they did their major mining, by the way, before the September show in '87. They came to the show, had a motel room, and there's the four principals. If you saw Pete's movie, Nick Fennell, you might remember him in the film. Dunbar is the other principal, and they sold a lot of their material in their jewelry store in Fort Collins. Now, what did their specimens look like? Now, Pete showed this specimen after cleaning. So this is the specimen in their room, which was destined even then, actually sold to the Denver Museum before it was cleaned. It has been on exhibited before it occupied its permanent home in the museum, because it's on exhibit at the Denver Museum, so you can see it. This is the same specimen, but you're looking down on it. So it's a very intense color, and of course Pete's picture is better than this one. But it's a fabulous matrix piece. And it's the matrix pieces from the Red Feather Lakes that are truly the fabulous, high value, high prestige. I mean, they are the real fabulous specimens you want. Single crystals are still affordable on the market. There's a small group that's probably only maybe 5 or 6 inches across, doubly terminated, nice color. Dave Bunk has a smallish, compared to the Denver Museum piece, that is, matrix specimen also with great color. Now, a really, really small locality that does not have, that has never had a lot of specimens, was discovered along Little Badger Creek. There's a fault along the north-south fault along Little Badger Creek. One side is sedimentary rocks, the other side is Precambrian. So this comes out of Precambrian rocks, and the amethysts that were found there are usually smallish, and they're always overgrowths on white quartz. So this is a close-up of a large matrix specimen that the Denver Museum owns, dug by George Robinson. It appears that George Robinson was the digger and basically responsible for distribution of it. These things came out in '84 and '85. This is one of the late stage ones that were sold. Don Knowles was a major distributor for a lot of these, and this one is on display. This one is actually on display at the School Mines Museum. So if you were there last night, you had a chance to see it in the case. This one is also on display. Now, for those who missed that, you're still in luck. This one, which ended up in Dave Bunk's collection, is on display also in his case. Dave Bunk and Brian Lee's, in their 2 fishbowl cases, do have some of the best Colorado specimens from certain localities that you can see. So if you want to see the best, you want to see those 2 cases. And of course, if you want the best Amazonite, you just go on the other side and you see Joseph Doris's case. But there are still specimens wandering around if you're willing to pay the price. This was in 2018, Main Street of Canyon City. It's a big piece, about like this. And I can't read the label, but I think it was $2,000 for that piece. When I went there just a couple of months ago, it's gone. So somebody did buy it. So that's white quartz with those little amethysts as late stage overgrowths. Columbite, big, black, heavy, massive minerals. For people who really like pegmatite minerals, Columbite is one of the ones, because it usually is very sharply formed, that people chase after. And certain places, instead of getting little crystals, you get big ones. And that's still small for Columbite. There are some Columbites in South Dakota that got about that high. And it is an ore mineral, usually not found in big pieces. The Michael Ode, produced back in the 80s, had exposed on some high walls massive crystals like this. And this one is just a fragment because the top and bottom are broken off. The Rose Dawn, back in the 80s, had a small quarry with aquamarine crystals bigger than the size of an arm, lined up like picket fence along the outcrop, and in several different places you could also take out large columbites. This one is also on display in the showroom. Now, this one, the Santa Fe Mountain one, is an interesting locality. It was described in 1940, well, it was visited in 1943 by USGS geologists who were physically taken to the locality by the claim owner before any topographic maps, modern day ones, were made. They described it. Eckel in 1961 described it with the wrong location in Minerals of Colorado of 61. That error got carried through to Minerals of Colorado in 1997, which is why nobody's visited this locality, until 2013 when I finally found it. It took me 3 trips finding it. And what's interesting is the discovery pit is not on the physical claim.
Yeah.
So even the claim holders, when they filed their claim, made a mistake. The quarry this is the old quarry. The dump for this goes down here. That dump goes into a narrow ravine. And the narrow ravine goes down and it makes a curve and exits a high wall into the valley. You can't see the dump unless you're right there. If you're down below, you can't see the dump. If you're above the quarry, you can't see the dump. That makes it even harder to find it. Now, was it worth the effort? That's a pretty significant size Columbite. Now, other than soap and water, this has not been cleaned yet. It still does produce beryl. Some of them are the normal pencils of beryl with smooth faces. This one is sort of interesting because it starts narrow and gets even narrower. And it also has produced garnets, and somewhere in here there may even be the chrysoberyl that was described. I mentioned the Devil's Hole before. The Devil's Hole is not a little pegmatite. I'm quite a distance from it, and you can see the size of it. It's got a regular road up to it. Now, it was first claimed in 2007 by James Endicott, who lived in Canyon City. He was an early day gem miner. He mined amazonite, he mined rose quartz, he mined aquamarine, he mined tourmalines. So he was all through the state and was actually doing quite well. He was even hired for a short time in 1913 and 14 to be the gem expert for the Colorado Bureau of Mines, who did annual reports. He was a major informant to Sterrett, who also did the U.S. gem reports, at that time. So, unfortunately, his prospecting successes ended in 1926 when he drove his car off the Cripple Creek Florissant Road and died in a single car accident. But everybody knew him. He made the newspaper. Here he is posed at what is today the Devil's Hole Quarry. And this is one of the major things after the beryl was mined out, was the rose quartz. The Devil's Hole produced, and may still produce, the best rose quartz in Colorado in giant quantities. And it is that good a color. It also produced loads of columbites. Usually the columbites from there are flat things that look like metallic spear arrowheads. But this one is remarkable in that it's the classic blocky columbite orthorhombic pose. So that's the C-axis, so you've got, A, B, and C, the 3 faces, and then you've got the modifications. This is the type of shape you will see in most of the textbooks. Now, this one here, you've certainly seen this on display. This one is an interesting locality. Eckel, okay, the first mention that could be related to this fluorapatite deposit was in 1917. I don't think it's referring to that. Eckel said that Enlick cited it, which by the way is wrong. Enlick did not. There's no mention of it in Enlick at all. And it was not mentioned by Smith and nor Randall's 3 minerals of Colorado. So this locality was not known until a graduate student from the Colorado School of Mines had a map. Gableman had to map the area for his master's thesis. And in his master's thesis, he talks about the pegmatite he ran into, it intruded into a granodiorite of tertiary age. And he said, oh yeah, the yellow beryl, it's in there. And he goes, much of the beryl is clear and transparent. There are numerous bugs. I mean, you read that in a thesis and everybody heads out there. Well, some researchers did, and they published the first article on this locality in 1965 and identified it as apatite. Now, from that technical journal, it finally filtered into the collector community, and Steve Brighton, local collector, George Robinson, you've had me mention him 2 or 3 times already, put a claim on it and started collecting crystals from it in 1980. So it's in 1980 the specimens started showing up. And here's one, School of Mines collection, donated by Steve Brighton in 1982. So that's their oldest crystal from that locality. As you notice, it's also a significant size. And periodically people, because of where it's located down a canyon, and it's a big dike, it cuts across the canyon. So it's not something that's going to collect out in a year, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 1982, 2020, that makes it 40 years. Okay, so this was in 03, this was being sold in the motel show. There's the big one he had. There's no difference between, except for size, there's no difference between that and the ones in the cases you can go and look at right now. And then, of course, in 08, someone else shows up with a whole flat of pocket crystals from there. And then we come up to the Tucson show in 2021. And again, Philip Perston had whole beer flats of this stuff. And the large giant crystal that you see in the Mines Museum display case is this one before the Mines Museum bought it. So the key takeaway from this is if you've got the courage and maybe the contacts and energy, this deposit is not even close to being depleted. Now, Pikes Peak districts, I'm not going to go through them all. I'm just going to show a couple of pictures from 2 districts. Crystal Peak, which is near Lake George in Florissant, and the Cameron's Cone specimen rock trend. What's nice about this trend is it goes from Cameron Cone all the way to Bear Creek Canyon, almost a constant elevation, and because it's right outside Colorado Springs and you can look at it, meaning you can see it from the city, it's usually snow-free. So if you want to collect there, you have to be willing to hike from the road up. So it's an area that's restricted due to personal energy that you're willing to expend. So, Crystal Peak, a couple of years back, a guy outside the main trend started finding some spotty-colored amazonites. What made this discovery fabulous is that they're monobox. Now, he's not holding 2 separate monobox, by the way. He's holding one specimen with 2 monobox. And they are as good as you look. This one is one that absolutely I fell in love with. It's 10 inches tall. This time it's in inches, not centimeters. And you've got a monoback on one side and a bovino twin on the other. So there are still things in that area that are coming out from individuals who are collecting on their own, by hand tools. This is also hand tools. Derek, the son, David and Linda Leedy, which has a booth here, by the way, have been collecting for quite a few years, how about decades, in the Crystal Peak area, more than one spot, and they've been producing some fabulous Gummites. This is one of them, and you can see the size on that. Now, one of the rare minerals in the Crystal Peak area is bertrandite. Now, bertrandite is usually an alteration product of beryl. So you oxidize the beryl and then hydrate it. So that's what bertrandite is. In the Crystal Peak area, the bertrandites that are found, not many, appear to be primary, so that they're not an alteration product. They're coming directly from solution onto the face. This is an early day 1979 crystal. It's only one of three that were found. The photograph is a historic photograph by John Munchin, who was an early day mineral photographer, and his pictures, his backgrounds are often red, which is not usually done anymore. So that's how you can almost recognize it's a John Munchin photograph. That is a significant crystal. It's about that big. Now, another one that actually stayed hidden for decades was a single bertrandite specimen found at Crystal Peak also in the well, it's now old, but it was right after the claiming of Bob Barsha's and Rock Courier's claim, which is in the Crystal Creek. It's just upstream from Joe Doris's diggings. It has actually had quite a few discoveries, but this was found by Al Ordway. But Al Ordway was digging on Bob Barsha's claim with permission, and the understanding was that everything went to Bob Barsh with only one or two specimens that Al Ordway could keep for his personal labor. This did not stay with Al Ordway. This crystal, which is nice, is it stayed in Bob Barsh's collection. Bob Barsh passed away and donated, meaning not donated, it was inherited by Rock Courier. Rock Courier passed away and the collection was put up for auction, and Brian Lees purchased that one specimen. Now, this claim, or this discovery, which was only made last year, consisted of a beer flat of bertrandite clusters. This is just one of them. You can see them you can see four of those specimens on display over in the show, and that is the total number of bertrandite discoveries I have found from anybody, either by word or by actually seeing. So this is a very rare mineral from that area. Now, I can talk about Cameron Combe. Martin Guth, who is still active and a collector back in 2011, made a gigantic discovery of smoky quartz crystals. The pocket he took out, I could physically squat in like this. He videotaped his cleaning of the pocket out. This is what he carried in his backpack, because he started at the creek, so he had to climb up by hand. This is one of the crystals that came out. This is not even clean. This is what it looked like right after it came out. Here's a picture of a group that came out, plus all the other ones that he may not have brought down. So this was an absolute exceptional pocket of smoky quartz. No feldspars, no other accessory minerals, just smoky quartz. So there's still a lot out there if you're willing to do the work. And there might even be a few places where club trips you might even be able to find something, since I showed one field trip where with a radiation detector you could do real well. Now, the last thing I want to go through is I'd be remiss if I didn't at least mention Antero. This is the earliest known picture of the whole digging area. Douglas Sterrigan, if you notice, is the geologist who came out here. He was guided here, again, by James Endicott. He guided him up here. They're on the west side of the valley, where the Jeep trail goes up, and they're just looking out over it. Sterrick did not have a panorama camera. Remember, this is an old-fashioned camera, full format. It shot glass plates this big. So he's shooting with a glass plate, and then has to develop the glass plate on site and bring the glass plates back. USGS still has the glass plates. So this is a merged photograph of the locality as it looked then. Now, back in '03, Steve Brancato, who was also known for a pocket of rare aquamarine crystals on matrix. Soon after that discovery, he made a small topaz discovery where about 7 to 9 crystals came out. Brian Lees has one, Dave Buck has one. They've both been photographed and have been illustrated in magazines and online, but there are a whole bunch more. The locality, by the way, if you notice, is way down low. Back before the Jeep Trail was made, when the clubs used to lead trips to Mount Antero, they'd come from this side, they'd hike up this canyon, and this is where they did all their digging. So the west face of Mount Antero did not even get looked at until after the road came up. In fact, it was so rarely looked at that Richard Pearl in his first book says, oh, the west face of Mount Antero does not appear to have much productivity. And you can check his first edition, and he says that. Anyway, the topazes that came out are reasonable size. They're all sherry and gem quality. There's one. Here's 2 more. Well, if you notice again, they're also, they're not chipped. They're just sherry, gem quality, unbroken. They're apt and perfect for cutting, which will never happen. Okay, here's a more modern view of the same one that Sterritt took. The diggings today, the ones that get publicized, are on a block of claims called the Cardwell Claims, which occupies almost this entire south knob. And collecting conditions allowed up there have to do with making arrangements with Craig Cardwell. So the pictures I'm going to show you are legal specimens that were done through arrangement with Craig. Now, in '48, the topazes that had been found on Antero were very rare. They were usually etched, ugly blobs. The Smithsonian has a tray of 1938 trip topazes, sherry color, completely etched, ugly, could never be displayed. So during the 80s and 90s, there were only 2 or 3 people who found a few topazes that had any attractiveness. Well, the '03 one was the first group of attractive ones, and then in summer of 2020, a whole pocket of them was hit. I've just photographed the 4 best. And by the way, the fact that they look burned out, that's the screen that's doing it. The monitor here, they look perfectly fine. They were found by Justin Ivory, who was working in agreement with Cardwell, and this is, of course, Cardwell's video photo. There's a close-up of at least one of them. So you can see they are also sherry colored and still attractive. Now, there's another one from, these 2 are in that group photograph. Now, this is last summer. Another digger working with Jason Royce and Ian Sheppel. Now, Jason Royce and Ian Sheppel have a booth at the Crown Plaza, and they may have some topazes that they can legally sell. So this is what it looked like when it came out. So this is taken right on the mountain where their excitement couldn't control them. The largest one and a whole bunch of others were part of Craig's share. So this is a picture of the same other crystal that was photographed in Craig's shop. So again, the crystals I just showed you by Roy Jason and Ian are all legal. Now, that concludes my quick survey of, shall we say, unrelated type, rarely seen minerals. The point I want to make is that Joe Doris and the people who use big earth-moving equipment, they're truly commercial diggers, okay? And that they do provide the high-end specimens, and they're going to continue to do it. But the real diversity of stuff that's found in Colorado is not due to them. It's due to the fact that we are a mineral collecting state, and we have hundreds of individual mineral collectors out there scurrying around every corner they can think of, each with different philosophies. And while they may find a small pocket, they'll still find specimens that they don't want to keep all of them. So the fact that we're active collecting We have lots of collectors, means that for those people who want to buy the best, except for what the collector keeps himself, we'll have the opportunity through the following years that come of obtaining things that haven't even been found yet. So this is not, Colorado is not a state where we're closed off. And with that, I'd like to thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any questions?
There's a lot, we're looking for young or clubs or anyone interested in digging it in Larimer County.
Oh.
Dirt Divers Mining Company has a booth right downstairs, and we have all kinds of corks. And I saw a lot of stuff in that video that looks like stuff in my trash pile. So I would love to encourage any of you to come up. After this show, we're going up to go digging.
And just repeat, he's down in the Evolution
Yes.
Ballroom below, and he's
Yes,
on
and
far south.
I dig with Ian and Jason, and yes, they're over the crown, and their aqua that I got them to enter in the contest won first prize. So, woo! And I've got stuff over there and stuff downstairs. Anybody that wants to come digging can come digging. We've got plenty. Thank you.
Thank you. Cool. He may be sorry he offered that, though, but we'll see.
I didn't need to rile him up.
Oh, yeah. Awesome. Well, here we go.
Are there any of the rare metals found in Colorado?
Okay,
Stay for the next talk.
okay, you said rare metals, you didn't say rare earths.
Rare earths. Thank you.
Okay, good, that's what I wanted.
Yes.
Because rare metals, I did talk about rare metals.
We saw the gold. Yes.
Yeah.
No, rare metals are tantalum, niobium. It has to do with the column in the periodic table. Rare earths, I could comment about it, but the next talk will do rare earths excellently.
Yes.
So I'm not going to steal his thunder.
Yeah.
Philip and I, by the way, Ed Raines, Philip Person, and myself, the three of us, we've been friends for quite a long time. I've been friends with Ed since 1973, and Philip and I since 2013 when we met.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, well, very good. Yeah, that's our next speaker. So, rare earth mineral. And it's really interesting, Everybody keeps saying, oh, they're all coming from China. We have an opportunity. And I know Phil's going to talk about that.
No promises, but I'll see what I can do.
He's going to be talking about the rare earth minerals found here in Colorado. And they're on the mine dumps because people it's not gold or silver, it's just over there. So he's the man. I'm an agate guy, so I don't know nothing about minerals. So, yeah, Bart. Mark, sorry.
One comment, I've spent a lot of time collecting in the last 40 years, but there's a lot of things you hear that aren't true. I didn't read the 3 books, Antero book and 93. I didn't read these all until 2021 because of different reasons, but the couple from California left a note on my car in '84, and that's why I found the aqua I found. But my friend that moved to Canyon City, and I didn't see the 2014 collector's one, but somebody put it on YouTube and they said how that aqua was found. Nothing could be further from the truth. There wasn't anything except the 2 specimens that I found. There wasn't anything that looked, but the couple from California, they had come out, they're in the Eureka book. But it's just amazing what you can hear, and I've heard things that are so far from the truth, so don't believe it just because somebody tells you this is the way it was found. It was easy. There was about a ½ an inch of like sand, and those are the only 2 crystals that I have that had fluoride on them. But the couple from California, my actual aqua is in black and white in Mark's book. I mean, I was just flawed. I mean, I didn't read these because I had other problems.
Yeah.
But anyhow, I just wanted to make a comment. Don't believe everything you hear.
All right. Very good. Well, Mark, thank you so much.
Okay.
Very, very good talk.
Thank you.